All right. Hello, everyone. Welcome to Outside the Studio. I'm so honored to introduce you to Toni Okamoto, who is the author of a new book out called Plant-Based on a Budget, Quick and Easy, which I've had the pleasure of getting to test and try and read through and dog ear and get food stains on for the past couple months leading up to our time together. And here's the beautiful, if you're watching on YouTube, here's the cover, which everything in this and also on your blog, Toni, just looks so mouth-wateringly good that it's like almost hard to not want to, try going plant-based just because, even flipping through it right now, I just ate lunch and it's making me hungry.
Well, thank you. Thank you so much.
Yeah. So thank you for being here. Do you want to start off by just telling the audience a little bit about yourself?
Sure. And thank you for having me. I'm excited about our chat. I have been plant-based myself for 16 years. And before that, I was vegetarian. And before that, I ate everything and focused primarily on highly processed and fast foods. And I had never made the connection of what I put in my body and how it made me feel. To me, food was all about getting full and tasting good. And when I started feeling a little bit unwell at my track practices, my coach asked me what I was eating, which was kind of weird. Like I thought, wow, that's a weird question, because to me, it was not about how it made me feel. So he was the first person to suggest I modify how I was eating and incorporate more vegetables and eat less red meat and less processed meat and less fast food. So I listened and I began to feel better and thrive as an athlete. And very slowly and gradually and imperfectly, I embraced a plant-based diet over the next 6 years or so. And then later down the line, so now it's been 11 years, I have been working on plant-based on a budget. And that was mostly because a lot of my family was suffering from severe diet-related health issues like type 2 diabetes and heart disease. And it was very, very extremely severe with fatal consequences and a lot of suffering from both the people who were experiencing those consequences personally, but also the whole family suffers when someone suffers. So I would regularly talk to my friends and family and community about eating healthier, and cost was definitely the number one thing I heard that was prohibitive, and access. And so I compiled a lot of my family's favorite recipes, put them on plant-based on a budget, made sure that you can buy all the ingredients from a place like Walmart at an affordable cost with familiar foods and ingredients that they would feel comfortable eating. And that was the beginning of it all.
What a cool story. I love that. It's so interesting to me to hear you talk about your experiencing of making that connection of what I put in my body makes a difference in how I feel. And I think so many young people don't make that connection either. And I think it's really interesting that our society, or maybe it's our I'm not really sure what the main driver of this issue is, doesn't seem to really educate us around what we eat matters, and actually it matters so much that like it makes us feel a certain way directly because of what we're eating.
And it's sad because generational habits are passed and passed and passed. And so if you grew up eating, we'll say healthy, at least a well-balanced diet with lots of fresh foods, then you believe that a complete meal is well-balanced. And as an adult, you take those habits into consideration when preparing your food, and therefore continue on incorporating more vegetables and fruits and whole foods into your diet. And if you, on the other hand, don't grow up eating a lot of vegetables, like for me, if I were going to eat broccoli, it was boiled and with mayonnaise. And so it really had to be a big shift for me to think about preparing vegetables. I just didn't have the experience. I hadn't had a sweet potato, a butternut squash, kale, brown rice. I hadn't had so many foods, and it was already out of my comfort zone to incorporate more vegetables, but then to think about all of these other types of cuisines that I had never tried was also intimidating.
Yeah. Well, you bring up such a good point, and I think about that so often as I work as a health coaching practitioner in terms of being out of you have to be able to get out of your comfort zone to try something like incorporating a lot more vegetables into your diet. So I'm wondering if you have any tips, tricks, suggestions for those that are listening to this that are like, okay, I want to incorporate more vegetables into my diet, but I feel adverse to that. I don't know how to cook them. I don't know how to make them taste good. It just, I don't even know how to incorporate them. Or if there are people listening who have people in their lives who want to encourage to include more vegetables into their diet. Is there anything that worked well for you in terms of adopting this lifestyle, or things that you would suggest as you worked with your family to adopt this lifestyle?
Definitely. For me, I remember giving something a try and not liking it right away. And it's so easy to write something off and be like, okay, I tried it, didn't like it. But I recommend trying it and then trying it a different way, and then a different way, and then a different way, and then a different way, and seeing if one of those ways works for you. And for me, that was brown rice. I had only had white rice. I'm Japanese and I'm Mexican, and both of those cultures use white rice. So then moving on to brown rice, or incorporating that in addition to white rice, was not easy. It was chewier, denser, nuttier, and I just didn't like it. But now, after trying it in so many different ways and also giving my palate a chance to adjust, I love it. And it is a staple. Same with quinoa. I had never had quinoa, and if you don't know that you should rinse quinoa, it can be a little bit bitter. If you don't know that you can cook quinoa in vegetable broth to give it a little bit of flavor, you might think, well, this is really bland. So learning different ways to prepare something, doing very minor research like quinoa recipes and finding something that looks tasty to you and giving that a try, so it's not just straight up quinoa, might be helpful. And that's how I was able to grow to like certain things. Now, I will say I have tried mushrooms in every capacity. I've tried mushrooms straight up. I've tried different varieties, different recipes, and I don't like mushrooms. And so there's that. You can try something and you might never like it, but at least giving it a try. I know that we often think of having to do this for children, but for adults who haven't grown up with these types of diverse ingredients, it's helpful as well.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. I mean, I primarily work with adults, and it's like people who have for decades been eating a certain way will just straight up tell me, I don't like that. And I can respect that. Okay. I'm thinking of, like, for example, my partner who he's also Mexican, and the same thing, white rice, like still to this day doesn't really appreciate it when I do black or brown or even wild rice, but he'll eat it kind of begrudgingly. Although I've just kept trying again and again over the years, like what you're suggesting, different recipes, different styles of cooking. And I think for him, mostly it took me backing off of forcing it on him and just feeding myself. I stopped trying to please everyone in the household, and I started cooking for myself. And eventually he would try things here and there. And now it's like, okay, I'll eat that. So, so there's so many different ways. And I always appreciate the wisdom of people who have suffered the same thing with themselves or with loved ones. I was curious to hear how you went about educating yourself around making that transition. I mean, and I know this happened over the course of years, but it sounds like, you're a self-starter. It sounds like you're willing to experiment. Did you source different books? Did you read different blogs? Did you have any education around this?
Well, at the time, resources were much more limited than they are now. Right now, you can go online and find just about any vegan version of the food that you love. You love steak, you can try a vegan steak. It's very interesting and awesome how things have evolved. But at the time, that was not the case. And I would go to the library and check out books. And mostly I would try vegetarian cookbooks because the vegan books were few. Mm-hmm. But even then, you can make slight modifications and forego the cheese, for example, or the sour cream, or swap something in, which is also fun. And I think that that's how I became a cook, because I was having to figure out what were easy swaps. And not only for making it plant-based, but also because I was on a really extremely tight budget. And when you're following someone else's recipe, what is affordable to them may not be what is affordable to you. And so I would, if something called for kale and spinach was cheaper, I would swap that in. Or if I was making tacos and it had a whole list of taco seasoning ingredients like cumin and chili powder and all of these individual spices, I would say, well, I don't have those, and each bottle's $5. So I'm going to just buy a 50-cent taco seasoning packet and use the rest of the recipe. So I was very comfortable after a while playing with my food, making it work for me. And that's also how I develop my recipes now. I create this standard guide, but I leave a lot of flexibility for people to get inspired and customize the recipe for their own needs.
Yeah, I think that's probably one of my favorite things about this book. And I've spent a lot of time, to be honest with you, in the first like 20 pages of the book, where you give us all of these really cool tips and tricks to, before you even start, on the recipes. I think with a cookbook, it's easy to just flip open and be like, oh, I want to make that. That looks good. But I would suggest picking up a book like this, plant-based on a budget, quick and easy. Don't skip the first 20 pages, because Toni gives us here's what I love. I love, you talk about smart storage. I need to do this in practice. I love the idea of it, but I need to actually put it into practice. And I want to hear you talk about it too, if you wouldn't mind. Time-saving kitchen tools, meal prepping. One of the things I always talk about with clients, because I think that's one of the biggest helpful things you can add into your weekly routine that will help you start to move towards a path of behavioral changes. And then like your easy swaps, those things, I want to hear more about like what some of your favorite easy swaps are. So I just like in any cookbook too, I think most often an author will do some things like this at the beginning. And I would caution, as you pick up a cookbook, go through the beginning parts, because it'll make your life so much easier as you start working on the recipes. Anyways, Toni, would you tell us about your, can we talk about smart storage?
Sure. I know that it is really saddening for me when I have all the best intentions and I buy all this produce, and then life happens and I don't get to it on time. And then my cilantro is all wilted and my spinach is all wet and soggy. And it's just so sad, because then you have to throw away your hard-earned money. Mm-hmm. So taking a few minutes right after you go grocery shopping and storing it properly will extend the lifespan of your produce by days, if not even a week longer. And it can be really like, I know after going to the grocery store, you're exhausted. That's the last thing you want to do, but it's just great on your wallet and for the environment to not waste that produce. Yeah. So one of the easiest things that I like to do is take out my cilantro, for example, that's something that we go through a lot in our house. And my husband used to call our home the place cilantro came to die because I would bring it in the door and it would just die. And now I rinse it, give it a good rinse, and then put it in a cup of water after cutting the tips of the cilantro off, sticking it in a cup of water, and then putting it in the refrigerator. You can also put a silicone or plastic bag on top of it if you want to extend life even further. But if you can't be bothered, totally understand. Just put it in the refrigerator and store it like a bouquet of flowers. And that will really, really, really extend the life. You can even take cilantro that you've accidentally left on the counter for a night and now it's all sad, and stick that and it'll liven back up, and it's so beautiful.
Yeah, I love that's one of my similarly we'll buy it's like okay, so cilantro in our house is another staple, I'm sure similar to yours. And it's like, we can never remember if it's in the fridge already, how much we have. And so, yeah, then I'll open the produce bin and there will be like this brown soggy thing at the back. And it is so sad.
So sad.
Yeah, I hate that. Well, okay. So what are some of your favorite meal planning tips?
My favorite meal planning tips is one, do it. I know that it sounds more intimidating than it is. I know I also scroll through social media and you can see beautiful bento box reels and TikToks, and it looks like a big to do. Like it's got to be beautiful. It has to look a certain way. You have to invest in these certain containers. But really, when I think about meal planning and even meal prepping, I think I'm going to spend about 10 minutes and just make sure through the work week when I'm really busy, I have an idea of what I want to eat. And that can be like whole wheat tortillas, a can of beans, a jar of salsa, some frozen brown rice, or a batch that I cooked myself and froze. You can either buy it or do it yourself. And now I know I have a quick burrito to throw together for lunch or dinner. And doing that for the work week prevents me from making impulsive purchases out or spending money unnecessarily. And maybe it's, I know that some people have health goals that they're trying to achieve, and that ensures that you're going to continue on with those health goals. And when I don't have a plan, I will for sure make bad decisions because I get really hangry and irrational when I'm hungry. So knowing that I have a plan or I have snacks to hold me over on my commute home, or if I know I'm going to be out running errands, having that plan will save me big time.
For sure. Well, do you treat meal planning and meal prep separately?
Yes.
You meal prep? Can you tell us about your meal prep strategies?
Yes. I'll also tell you a little bit about my meal planning strategies, because it starts for me by assessing what I have on hand. Okay, I already have a can of pinto beans. I already have the jar of salsa. Now I just need to get these 3 other things to fill the gap so that I have the ingredients to make a whole meal. And I do that. And while I'm planning, I try to make sure that my ingredients can overlap. So if I'm buying a bag of onions, I know that they can be used in different recipes, or a bag of carrots that they can be used throughout the week in different recipes that complement each other well, instead of buying stuff to make pasta and only pasta, but they don't go into my stir fry or something like that. And so I assess my pantry and my freezer and my refrigerator, build a grocery shopping list, and then stay the course when I'm at the grocery store, because I know it is so easy to get distracted by the beautiful marketing and all of the sale signs. But if you stay your course and understand that a lot of the way the grocery store is designed is to get you to spend money, it will be helpful to make sure that you're getting the best deal by looking at the price per ounce, looking for the store brand, and also you can check out the store apps for coupons. For example, at my grocery store, there are coupons for things like if you buy 5 bananas, you get 10 cents off. Or if you buy 2 avocados, you get a free avocado. So it's cool that gone are the days of sugar cereals being the only thing that is available for coupons. You can also get produce as well. So that's how I meal plan. And then when I'm meal prepping at home, I am usually doing the very, very lazy version where I think of maybe 1 to 2 things that I can throw in my pressure cooker, like maybe a big batch of quinoa and a big batch of lentils, so that throughout the work week, I can throw those things in different recipes like pasta lentil sauce, or sorry, a lentil pasta sauce, or
I know what you mean.
a quinoa stir fry, or a quinoa lentil soup. And those are already cooked, so it shortens the length of time that I would be spending cooking during the busy work week.
Yeah. I'm curious about how much time you spend. And I know you're saying you do like the quick and lazy version. I'm always curious because when I started to meal prep and meal plan, I felt like maybe I spent too much time on Instagram scrolling through all the beautiful things. And I spent maybe like 4 hours total meal prepping after, and this is after I come home from the store and unpacked all my groceries, and like after I meal planned, it was like a full on thing. So I'm curious how much time you spend meal planning.
I try to spend maybe 30 minutes at most doing my meal prepping, and my meal planning is even shorter than that. And once you get the hang of it, like you really have your groove, I feel like it's so much easier and part of your routine that it doesn't take as long. And we talked, or you mentioned earlier, the getting the right tools in your kitchen. And that for me has been really helpful in cutting back the time I spend on active prep and active cook time. Like I got an Instant Pot a few years ago, and I got mine on sale. It had a big dent in it on Amazon. It was a return. So you can get high quality tools for sale prices because they're a little bit older now and people are getting the newer versions. But anyway, I got mine $30 off, and it has revolutionized the way I cook. I have quinoa in 5 minutes, lentils in 8 minutes, a bean chili in 3 to 5 minutes. And meanwhile, while it's building pressure and releasing pressure and cooking, I can go walk my dog around the block and not have to worry about sitting and watching the stove. So that has been helpful. Having knives that cut. I know that sounds so silly, but I used to have hand-me-down knives that my parents gave me, and I just thought that it took a while to cut a tomato. I just thought that that's how cutting a tomato was, and it wasn't until I bought a nice knife, and it wasn't even really nice. I think I got it at Home Goods or Marshall's for $5-10. It really was a dramatic change on how much time I was spending prepping, because cutting a carrot, cutting an onion just became so much easier and quicker.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. I did the same thing. I mean, we starting out like after college, kind of being, I don't know, I guess on a budget for, it felt like a decade. While my husband and I worked our way up in our careers, we would just, everything that we used in the kitchen probably literally came from the Goodwill. And I had the same experience with knives. Is like, you just have to kind of work at it, sawing the tomato. It wasn't until maybe 5 years ago we got ourselves some nice knives. So I would agree with that one for sure. Are there Instapot? Absolutely. And it's funny because I bought mine and then I think it sat in our pantry for like 2 years, and I was intimidated by the technology. And so I didn't use it. Do you ever hear that feedback?
I all the time, all the time. I know so many people who still haven't broken it open yet. And I encourage, if anyone is listening right now and you were gifted one for the holidays or your birthday, give it a try. Start with something really easy like rice or lentils, and you'll find that it's the best. It's amazing. And another tip, I used to travel by car, and we would go to somewhere like LA and get a hotel room. And for me, that's a 5.5, 6 hour drive.
Mm-hmm.
You pack the car with all your stuff, including your Instant Pot. And when you get to your hotel, it works as a little stove and a pressure cooker and a slow cooker. So depending on your needs, you can either set it all day, and when you get home from, maybe you're going to Disneyland, you have a nice nourishing meal for you. Or if you wanted to do a quick stir fry or a tofu scramble in the morning, you can use the saute function and cook that way. So I've saved so much money when traveling, especially if I'm going to a small weekend trip that's local and getting a hotel room, by bringing my Instant Pot.
Oh my gosh, that's genius. I've never thought of that before. I love it. Oh, yes. Do you know if you can, the insert, like the basket that goes inside? I'm sure you can replace those. I need to replace
Yes,
them.
I actually have several of them because I switch them out so that I don't have to wash. So say for when I'm doing my meal prep and you have just done your rice, take that one out, pop in your second container for your lentils, and then pop that one out and do your beans or something like that. So I have 3 different replacements, and they're much cheaper than buying 3 separate
Instant Pots.
Yeah.
Oh, I love that. Oh my gosh. Any other time saving kitchen tool tips? Because you're just full of them.
I know I'm conflicted about this one because I am always trying to use the least amount of single use plastic. But I know for a lot of people that a big deterrent from cooking healthy and feeding their families healthier and more produce is the cutting and the washing and the chopping and all of the things. And so I like to have some frozen produce on hand, not only because it's already pre-washed and pre-chopped, but because after I travel for work and I haven't had a chance to go to the grocery store, I still have my pantry staples plus my frozen produce to whip up together a nourishing meal that is going to be much better than ordering DoorDash or something like that.
Yeah.
So when I'm stocking my kitchen, having a few things that are frozen broccoli or frozen vegetable mixes in my freezer has been helpful.
Yeah. So good. Are there some key staples, ingredient wise, that you keep on hand all the time?
I have a lot of favorites, so I'm going to try to narrow it down. I love pinto beans. I know that there are other beans that exist, and that's fine. Like everyone else can have those beans, but I grew up eating pinto beans, and so I love them. And I don't usually go to the black beans or the kidneys, or unless I'm doing like a mixed bean soup. But I love having whole pinto beans. Right now, meat prices are through the roof, and plant proteins are very affordable still. They have not increased in price as much, and beans are one of those. If you don't want to buy them dried and cook them, it's still economical to buy the 15-ounce cans for 99 cents and use those. It's always beans, always rice. I think it's because I'm Mexican. That is the staple of my life, beans and rice all the time. I'll never get tired of it. It is what makes me happy and my comfort food. Give me an avocado on top of that and I am good. I'm really, really good. And then I like to have pasta. My husband likes bean pasta, garbanzo bean pasta. I like all pastas, so just give me a pasta, I'll eat it. And then I would say a good sauce.
Mm.
I tend to eat a lot of bowls with a vegetable, a grain, a protein, and a sauce. So having a few sauces, either homemade or store-bought, is key.
Mhm. Yeah, I love that. I wanted to talk a little bit about the the way that we label plant-based versus vegan versus vegetarian. I think plant-based is, I don't know if I would say new or newer term in terms of like the ways to cook and feed ourselves. And so I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about what exactly plant-based means. And is it the same as veganism? Is it different? How do you view that?
It is a varied answer depending on who you ask, but my interpretation is that vegan is more of a lifestyle, often more ethical, an ethical approach. Plant-based is, to me, also synonymous when we're talking about food only to vegan. And I find plant-based to be more inclusive, so I use that as my preferred word or words. A vegetarian, they eat often eggs and dairy. And then there's whole food plant-based, which often doesn't eat oil, sugar, or salt. So whole foods plant-based is different, but very similar. And often in that community, people are very serious about their health, or either trying to reverse type 2 diabetes or heart disease and live optimally health-wise.
Yeah. Oh, and you brought up a good point about whole foods, plant-based, and whole foods is something I often try to explain. What do we mean when we say whole foods? And so I understand, like, typically it's, sugar, salt, and oil, but would you add anything to that definition?
Of whole foods,
Yes.
I would say whole foods are more single ingredients that are plant-based, like the split peas or nuts, seeds, produce, things like that, that are in their whole form, and instead of being highly processed.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you. I think that's helpful to what do we mean when we say this when we're talking about these things?
Yeah.
So I wanted to know if you had a favorite, well, this will be a two-part question. If you have a favorite recipe in your book, or if you've received a lot of feedback about one particular recipe in your book that sounds like a crowd favorite.
I really like I have two favorites right now. One of them is the simple black bean chili. And it can be any kind of bean chili. You can basically do it with mostly pantry staples. And I like that it comes together very quickly, 10 minutes or less. And you can, if you have a pressure cooker, put it in there. I have all of the all of the recipes with a standard stovetop instructions, but where applicable, I put the conversions in a note if you have an air fryer or an Instant Pot or something like that and want to speed it up. So that's one of them. And I like that one because a lot of people don't have the tolerance for eating the same thing day after day when they're making a big batch of something. But you can take a chili, and one, it's very versatile. So use whatever beans you have, throw in whatever produce you have, and that's cool. But then you can mix it up by eating it on the first day as is, and then the next day serving it over roasted sweet potatoes. And then the next day serving it with a side of brown rice and some fresh cilantro and lime juice on top, and maybe red chili flakes and chopped red onion, and changing the flavors and the textures up, and also getting a little bit of diversity in your diet. So I like that. It also comes together in $5.
Mm,
So that's a plus.
for
Then
sure.
the other thing is more personal because it's something I grew up eating, and that is the sopa de fideo that my grandma used to make.
Mhm.
It's sort of like a pasta dish that is soupy, like a soupy pasta. It's a tomato base with what is essentially broken angel hair pasta. And I have found by talking to a lot of my friends and family members that growing up, if you ate top ramen, everyone has their way of liking this particular way of cooking it. And that's kind of like sopa de fideo. Everyone has their own family twist on it. And this is a take on the one that my grandma used to make minus cheese.
Mm, yeah. Mm, so yummy. Yes. I was curious, did you have more favorites or crowd favorites you wanted to share?
The crowd favorites, I would say there's a curry lentil soup in there that I have heard a lot of people enjoy.
I love curry and lentils. So yes, I would agree with that one. So I'm looking at the ice cream section and this is one of those things that I often flip to and I'm like, oh, that looks so good. Does it turn out looking like that?
Yes, it really, really,
Wow.
really does.
I'm
And
impressed.
I had heard about using frozen bananas for a long time for ice cream or milkshakes or things like that. And I had never frozen a banana. And everyone said if your bananas are turning brown or spotted, throw them in the freezer.
Yeah.
Nobody told me to peel them first. So
Oh,
when I got out my bananas, I just had these like rock hard bananas with peel that won't come off. So if you are listening, thinking about freezing your bananas, make sure you peel them. If you want to, you can even have them or quarter them so that they're easier for your blender to break up. But don't make the mistake that I made.
it's funny because I always peel them, but one time I was like, I think I asked, I had this mental conversation, do I need to peel a banana? And I threw it in. This was maybe like a couple months ago. And I realized, oh, you got to peel it first.
Yeah.
So I had that same conversation with myself. Okay, so I'm inspired. I'm going to try this ice cream. Clearly I haven't tried it yet, but I keep drooling over it as in right now, as well as the apple slice nachos. Oh my gosh, I'm making myself hungry.
What I like about that chapter is that I'm a dessert everyday person. I really have a sweet tooth, and I have had to train my brain to think of dessert as fruit as a dessert.
Mhm.
It is really sweet and also has no added sugar. So I'm relying on those natural sweeteners to satisfy my sweet tooth. And in the chapter that you're looking at right now, I tried to make fruit a little bit more enticing, like those apple slice nachos, which are basically just apple slices drizzled with nut butter, chopped nuts and seeds, and a little bit of melted chocolate. And I think the presentation really helps, especially if you have a family who is on the pickier side and they're not going to buy that apple slices or dessert. Here's an apple for dessert. It makes it more exciting, and presentation really matters when you've got a picky family.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, are these things that are these recipes that now your family has adopted and they get excited about that they cook themselves as well?
I wouldn't say all that. However, I did work with 100 recipe testers. Most of them were meat eaters who have families who are very opinionated. And it was important to me that even if one person in the family is plant-based or plant curious or vegetarian, that their whole family could eat the food and give their stamp of approval, because they will ultimately be the reason that you stick to it or that it's too hard and they're making your life more exhausting. So I wanted to take away that pain point, make sure that these recipes were tested by picky kids, picky spouses, and still enjoyed.
Yeah. Yeah. It's just, I think I'm saying that with a sigh because I just empathize with a kind of picky eater family. But it's like I said, it has evolved over time. And so there is hope.
That's
Um,
good.
yeah, yeah, for sure. What was I going to ask you? I just lost my train of thought. Oh, I wanted to hear about the more entrepreneurial side of building this business.
Hmm.
And you talked about where the inspiration came from. And I think it's just so admirable that being an entrepreneur myself, I'm always trying to understand what drives people in terms of, you know, creating something like plant-based on a budget in terms of it's like across the board website, blog, you have this amazing book. It's really like you've kind of created your own brand around this realm of cooking. And so I just wanted to hear if you had any thoughts about, living that entrepreneurial lifestyle, if anyone's thinking, it always starts with an idea, right? Typically, I mean, maybe I shouldn't say always, but typically it starts with an idea, something that you believe in, that you're inspired by, that you want to share with others. Do you have any suggestions for people thinking about that lifestyle?
I do. First and foremost, don't wait for perfection. Just as soon as you have an idea, put it into action. It's something that I see that stuns a lot of people into making any moves.
Mm-hmm.
And then it remains an idea for months and then years, and then it just never happens. And for me, when I started Plant Based on a Budget, I'm actually celebrating 11 years this week. And I posted a photo of my Instagram feed way back when on Instagram, and it was terrible. Like I had a busted up flip phone, and that was my camera. I didn't have a real camera, and my laptop at the time had to be propped up because the screen was broken, so it wouldn't stay up. I had to put like something behind it, and I just didn't wait to get the right equipment or to save money until I could make it work. I just started using what I had and not letting perfection be the enemy of progress. And that, I believe, set me apart because I then was one of the first vegan bloggers. There were a handful already, but I get to be among this group that started over a decade ago when things were very, very extremely new. And I don't know that I would have been able to break in a little bit later if I waited. So there's that. And then also, when I decided to go full time in 2016, a lot of my friends and family were, I don't want to say they're not supportive, but they just love me so much. And they wanted me to make good decisions that were going to be beneficial to my future and to my long-term success. And they couldn't understand why I would leave the comforts of salary and of healthcare benefits and go to a job that I wasn't monetizing yet. So it was very hard for my family and friends. And I just had to have so much belief in myself that I continued on down this path despite the obstacles I was facing with lack of support. And I know it's really hard. I know it's super challenging. And at the time I was single, so I didn't have a partner saying this is not the best move for our family, which I can understand is even harder. But I recommend just moving forward if you feel it deep in your feel the passion deep in your heart.
Yeah. Do you think that's the thing that keeps having the passion is what keeps you going when the times get tough?
Yes. And because of how things evolved, it looks more glamorous from the outside to people when you have a lot of social media followers or you come out with a book or something really cool happens. But all along the way, it is very challenging and slow. And I did everything by myself for so long and I was unpaid for so long that I hope that people who come to this job, find that passion to fuel them through the hard times, because it is not an instant moneymaker. It is not something that is glamorous. There are the ups and downs of any job. But if you really, truly want it and you can't imagine doing anything else, I say go for it, because it is very rewarding when you get to live your passion every day.
Yeah. Okay, so one more question on this thread is around, there's the huge shift from, like, if you're somebody who's used to that corporate schedule of the 9 to 5 Monday, having that set schedule where you're expected to be at your desk a certain amount of time, making the switch to the entrepreneurial lifestyle. One of the benefits, obviously, is you get to create your own schedule, but also you're the only one driving the quote unquote progress forward, or your milestones, or creating your deadlines, right? So I wonder if you have any suggestions about not necessarily work-life balance, but creating a schedule that works for you. And, I think there can be a slippery slope in the life of entrepreneurship where that there is no beginning and end to a workday. You can work on the weekends. You can really drive yourself to work hard and not give yourself the time off. Did you experience any of this? Do you have any thoughts?
I may not be the best person because I really love my work and I feel it fits in so seamless with my life. Even taking a picture of the food that I'm eating is technically working if I'm posting it.
Yeah.
But I will say what has made a really big difference is understanding that this is a job and that I should create some distinction between my personal life and my job life. And I mean that in several ways, including waking up and opening the blinds, stepping outside if you're working from home, getting dressed, brushing your teeth, taking a shower as though you're going to your regular job. When I first started, I thought, this is the best thing ever. I can just roll over in bed and like be on my computer. But then I felt like it was really weighing on me. I wasn't getting as much sunlight. I felt lonely at times. And so now that I realize having the same type of structure, especially in that morning time where I'm getting my day started, is beneficial to me and helps me understand that self-care, like getting dressed, taking a shower, brushing your teeth, sets you up really well for the day.
Yeah, totally. Similarly, I'm always curious about rituals, and I think of them as bookends to the day, like your morning rituals, which you just talked about. Do you have any evening rituals that help you kind of close the laptop lid and turn off the entrepreneurial brain, or does that seep into your dream realm too?
There are a couple things. I will say that when you are an entrepreneur, sometimes you're unable to stop working, especially once you have people who help you, because if they can't do their job, then they can't move forward if they have a question for you. So there are things like that that I am really grateful to have help with. And if it just requires me to do a 5-minute response, then that's amazing. So it's never fully ending for me. But there are things I find sacred in my home, like at dinner. When my husband comes home, we always eat together unplugged. No one has their laptops open, their phones open, TV's not on, nothing like that. We sit at our table and we share the best thing and the worst things from our day. And I find that to be really heartwarming and strengthens the connection with my husband, because it's not undivided attention. It's really, I'm super present. Mm-hmm. And then on weekends, I try to be in the sun. Sun makes me very happy and it really impacts my mood. I'm fortunate to live in a place where it's sunny a lot because I'm in Northern California. and I garden. And so I set a time, I set aside time to be out in the garden and not think about work, even if it's an hour, preferably like 5 hours. But I make sure that I have that time for myself to be out looking at the butterflies and the bees and the flowers, and to be more in contact with the earth.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. I live up in the Pacific Northwest, and we're blessed to have a very sunny day. And I'm looking at it, imagining you out in your garden and wanting to just take my socks off and put my feet in the grass.
Yes, I never wear shoes on the weekend. I love just being out barefoot outside. It feels really nice.
Oh, it's so good. So I want the last question I typically ask is something along the lines of, is there anything that you wish I would have asked you that I didn't? Or is there any kind of key takeaway that you hope people listening really absorb from this conversation? And you can answer both questions or just one of them.
I think you were amazing. I really enjoyed our conversation today. And if there's one thing I can leave people with, is that I mentioned it in 2 different ways, both food and with business. But I also feel like it is helpful for me in life to remember that perfection isn't real, and that even if you see someone who looks like they have a beautiful life on social media, or your neighbor, and you see them and you're like, wow, they're so put together, just remember, like, we're all humans and we're all imperfect. And if you have goals, like you want to eat more plant-based and you slip up, that's okay. No worries. Like, next meal, you can eat plant-based. Or if you want to leave your job and start a creative passion, yet you're afraid, try again tomorrow. Like, build that courage. It's okay. Go at your own pace, and you know your limits, you know your boundaries, and I believe in you.
Toni, thank you so much. This has been such a amazing, inspiring conversation, and I really appreciate your time. And also that you did follow your passion and you created this beautiful book and you shared it with all of us, and also the blog and the Instagram channel. So please feel free to go give Toni a follow. What is your Instagram handle? Plant-based on a budget, is it right?
Yes, that's correct.
And same with the website. And I'll make sure all of those links get into the show notes so that people can easily find you and your beautiful work. And thank you so much.
Thank you. I really appreciate it.
Well, everyone, that concludes another amazing episode of Outside the Studio. I hope you enjoyed yourself. I hope you learned something new, maybe remembered something old, maybe felt inspired to apply something to your life. You can hear my dog in the background. She's doing a little happy dance. So Daisy enjoyed it. Anyhow, I wanted to just pop in here to wrap us up to say a couple of things. Number one, I have such an amazing team that helps me put these podcasts together. Without them, I wouldn't, be able to bring these amazing conversations to you. So thank you to my producer, my director of creative services, my sound editor, my engineer, Consistency Media. Don't know what I would do without you. Thank you, thank you, thank you. And the amazing creation and artistic musical genius, Drew Lovern. Thank you so much for putting together this music specifically for Outside the Studio. So unique to the show, only place you're ever going to hear it is right here. Thanks, you guys. You make my world go round. Stay well, everyone. Thank you for listening. Don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review, share on the socials, especially if it's a show that you think, hey, this could help somebody else. That's what this is all about, right? We're sharing information so that we're better, so that we're inspired, so that we're lifting each other up, and we're learning how to be in this world, living on this planet to the best of our ability, sharing information and inspiring one another. And that's my hope. That's my hope for the show. Take care.